Hello, May class, and welcome to your next history lesson for wider curriculum. In the previous lesson, we started looking at Egypt, and we were looking through a knowledge organizer, and you were doing a cold task. So in today's lesson, we are going to be continuing on our topic. Let me share my screen with you. Right, in this lesson, we are going to be going through the new vocabulary for the topic. So our words that we are going to be looking at were these words, and these ones we did read through them yesterday when we were reading through the knowledge organizer. I have shared the knowledge organizer as well as the cold task template on the Teams chat, so you can have a look at it there. Right, our keywords for this topic are Egypt, Egyptian, ancient, pharaoh, Nile, pyramid, valley, Tutankhamun, tomb, hieroglyphics, weighing, tributaries, mouth, basin, scarab, and mummification. So we're going to be using these keywords to see if we can write our own definition for each one, or as many as you are able to know. When you've tried this, we're going to then reveal the definition for each word. So I want you to write these words down and see if you can come up with a definition for each one of these words. Okay, so let's start. Egypt is a country in the northeastern Africa. We have looked at it previously on a map and finding where it is, just joining onto the bottom of Asia there, with the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea on either side, and it's obviously got the Nile River that runs through it. So if you got a definition that is similar to this, give it a tick. If not, maybe add to your definition. Right, Egyptian. An Egyptian is relating to Egypt and its people. So the people that lived in Egypt, we call them Egyptians, and things that relate to Egypt. So any tombs or anything that they've found that come from this era, we call them Egyptian tombs or Egyptian mummies or Egyptian jewelry. So it relates to Egypt and its people. Ancient is something that belongs to the distant past. A pharaoh was a ruler in ancient Egypt. So he ruled over Egypt. And we have been learning about Tutankhamun a little bit, and he was a pharaoh in ancient Egypt as well. As mentioned previously, the Nile River is the longest flowing river in the world. And I want you to think back, I did mention it in a previous lesson, how many different countries does the Nile run through? Do you remember what they were? Pyramids. The pyramids were found in ancient Egypt, and a lot of them are actually tombs that had valuable things that were buried with the pharaohs, and whoever was buried in their tomb, they were found there. Most of them are empty now because they've been discovered or they've been raided, but the pyramids were found in ancient Egypt and they were tombs. So a valley. A valley in Egypt on the west bank of the Nile is known for the tombs constructed there for the pharaohs. And a valley is also a low area of land that's usually found between hills or mountains, and it usually has maybe a river or stream flowing through it, so it is a lower area of land is what we call a valley. Tutankhamun was a king or a pharaoh of Egypt. Tutankhamun is also sometimes referred to as the boy king because he took over the ruling of Egypt when he was, I think it was 9, and he only lived for about 9 years, and then he died at about, they think, 18. He was a very kind of poorly kind of little boy, and yeah, so they call him the Boy King because he was just a boy when he took over and was ruling a whole country. A tomb is a large underground vault for burying the dead. Hieroglyphics, we have briefly looked at this already. Hieroglyphics were the writing system that was used in Egypt. Weighing. Now, this picture here shows the gods weighing things, okay? A religious motif in which a person's life was assessed by the weight of their soul. So weighing was quite an important thing during the Egyptian times. They had this idea that your afterlife depended on kind of the weight of your soul. And it was thought that in Egyptian religions, they believed that the heart was the key to having an afterlife. And it was thought that they used to examine the heart, and during the weighing, they used to weigh your heart. And if the heart weighed more than the feather, it was then consumed by a monster. So it shouldn't have weighed more than the feather. And that obviously then depended on their afterlife. So tributaries have to do with a river. So a tributary is a stream that flows into a larger stream or a main stem of a river or a lake, and we call that tributaries. So the tributaries are the smaller streams that flow into a larger one. Right, a river mouth, or what we have written there is mouth. You may have said something about, sorry. Excuse me. Wow. You may have written about the river mouth. Sorry, I've got to correct myself again. You may have written a definition for a normal mouth that we have, but when we're talking about tributaries and rivers and things, we're actually talking about the river, the mouth of a river. And that is where a river flows into the ocean. So where it opens up, just like your mouth opens up, if you can imagine, the river, like the River Nile, would flow into the ocean. And that's what we call the river mouth, of where it finally flows into the ocean. A river basin is an area of land that is drained by a river and its branches. So branches, all the bits that come off of it. So the area of land that, so you've got like a basin, and then the area of land is drained by the river and the branches of the river that come off of it. A scarab. Now, a scarab is a large beetle that was regarded as sacred in ancient Egypt. So the scarab, the Egyptians at least saw the scarab as a symbol of renewal and rebirth, and they were popular to have as amulets, so things hanging off like necklaces, and seals in ancient Egypt. Scarabs as a beetle survived in large numbers through and they were an important source of information for archaeologists and historians of the ancient world. Okay, so they were really important during the Egyptian times, and were really popular as amulets and as symbols of obviously rebirth. And then the last one is mummification. Now, mummification is a process in which the skin and the flesh of a corpse, so a dead body, is preserved. And there's actually a few mummies in a museum in the Ashmolean in Oxford that have been preserved, so they've been kept really well. So usually when the bodies in the olden times, like Egypt, would, if they weren't processed, they would have obviously just broken down eventually. And we have done a little bit about how animals do that as well. But the process would then keep the skin and the flesh of the of, for example, the pharaohs, and they would preserve them and they would like dry them out. So your task is the following. You are now, after you've done your original definitions before we read through these, you are going to add definitions to the keywords and a symbol to each one to help you remember the meaning of each word. So go back and rewrite the definitions for these words, and then make sure you have symbols to help you remember these meanings that go with your words. And then I would also like you to use these words in sentences. So your third task will be to use these vocabulary words in sentences that explain better of maybe that you understand the word, so you've used it correctly. So you could explain to me that mummification was the process of preserving the pharaohs and people during the Egyptian time. You could tell me that a river mouth is the opening of the river into the ocean. So use your own words, but try and use the words in a sentence. So you could say the Nile River mouth opened up into the Mediterranean Ocean. Or we could say that Pharaoh Tutankhamun was preserved by mummification. So make sure that you finish task 2 and task 3, because we should have done task 1 at the beginning of the lesson. And please make sure that you are sharing your work with us on Tapestry, and don't forget to upload it by 4 p.m. this afternoon.